You're listening to Haunting History Podcast, the podcast that reaches back into the past to the stories that still haunt us today. Tales of true crime, mysteries, and sometimes even the macabre. Join us as we travel back in time to the people and the lives behind the headlines. Listen as we research the stories that are still haunting those left behind, shining a new light on dark and cold cases. As the saying goes, someone out there knows something. Are you that someone? Welcome back to Haunting History Podcast. I'm your host, Kat.
And I'm Haley.
This week is episode 4 of our cold case series, Who Killed Kerry Patterson. If you haven't listened to the first 3 episodes, pause here and go listen. But to reiterate our topic, Kerry Patterson was a pretty and outgoing 15-year-old. On June 26, 1980, she left her new home in Fullerton, California, and walked to a local ice cream parlor to meet some friends. 3 of those friends, Danny, Michael, and Tony, left the ice cream parlor with Kerry, one of them, Danny, giving Kerry a ride on his handlebars to within a few blocks from her home. There, they have always maintained that they dropped her off and headed to their own homes. Kerry's family and friends never saw her again. Sometime between the time the boys said they left her and the few minutes it would have taken her to complete her journey home, Kerry disappeared. 6 months later, her mom, Crystal, saw a smart article in the Orange County Register saying a female's partial remains had been found in Tonner Canyon in Brea, California. What had originally been a missing persons case quickly changed to a murder investigation, which over the years has turned into a cold case. The sheriff's department believes that someone out there knows what happened to Kerry that day 40 years ago. We hope by sharing her story, it will help to find that person or people and appeal to them to please come forward and tell what you know. It may even be a tiny tidbit of information, so small that you don't think it matters or that it's insignificant. But to the detectives over the last 40 years and her family, that tiny bit of information may lead to a break in this case and give a sister and her mom the closure they and every missing person's family deserves. The Fullerton PD, who was the original responding agency, believed Kerry was a runaway, regardless of what her mom was saying or what evidence there was. This sealed Kerry's fate. For many years, law enforcement agencies have utilized the services of psychics. In fact, the CIA and Department of Justice recently released a guide to using psychics in investigations. In a study they did, 8 of the 11 agencies contacted reported that a psychic had provided, quote-unquote, otherwise unknown information which was helpful to the case. In 3 of those 8 cases, missing bodies were found in areas matching the description offered by the psychic. Crystal, Kerry's mom, was connected to a psychic back in 1980 by the police department. Throughout this time that I've been researching and interviewing Kerry's case, I have been talking to my friend, who happens to be a psychic medium, Christy. I don't always contact her for her abilities. A lot of times it's just as a friend to listen as I work through all the different aspects of a case. In this instance, I asked if she could see what she would get in regards to Kerry. Christy Vaughn by day is a clinical research manager and MBA Master's Business Admin in the healthcare industry. In today's episode, I have Michelle, Kerry's sister, and Christy. This is a second meeting between Christy and Michelle. In the first meeting, we really didn't pay attention to recording or sound, as we wanted Michelle, who was interested in hearing what Christy had to share. We wanted her to be able to react and respond or ask any questions she wanted without any concern that it was being recorded or would be shared. This meeting is us going over all of the things that Christy has said and allowing Michelle to interject now that she's had a couple of weeks to absorb all the information. This recording begins with a disclaimer Christy is going to read.
I am a psychic medium, which means I see and I talk to dead people. And yes, I do realize how crazy that sounds. My goal as a medium is to get validation and messages from the deceased person, which I can then convey to their living friends and family. It's certainly not an exact science. Sometimes the deceased people with whom I'm communicating don't have the answers to the questions we're asking. They may not remember things exactly as they occurred. They may want to talk to us, but they don't know exactly how to convey their message. Sometimes I or the living people to whom I'm giving the messages don't understand or interpret what I get correctly. This case in particular is really sensitive, and there's a lot at stake here. A heinous crime has gone unsolved for decades, and a family is grieving an unimaginable loss. I so appreciate the respect, empathy, and integrity in Kat's handling of cold cases, and I take the same approach. In a cold case like Kerry's, we're frequently challenged when I pick up information that can't be validated. We may never know if what I get is correct or not, and that can be really frustrating. Some of the material that I picked up about Kerry has been confirmed by her family and law enforcement, and we continue to get more. But I want to be really clear that what I contribute is never an accusation or proof of a crime, and it should receive the same level of scrutiny as any case-related information. No psychic should ever claim to be 100% right or insist that unvalidated data is the truth or fact. To do this work effectively, we have to take ourselves out of the equation and just deliver the messages. The facts will sort themselves out.
It was about a month ago, you and I went on a walk with Bob. But even before that, when I originally asked you about Kerry's case, I don't remember exactly what I gave you. I think I only told you her name. Is that correct?
Maybe her first name and maybe the year she disappeared, and I think that was about it.
Okay. When I called you that day and I said I'm working on a case, do you want to see what you get? What do you do?
I just tune in to the person and whatever information you do give me, whether it's the name or the year, and see what I get. And I start to hear things, see things, feel things, and I write them down and I send it to you, and then you can help. You usually don't give me a lot more information, but you at least say yes or no when you can.
Like, is that true or is that not true?
Yeah, and that helps me because it kind of opens up the door more, because then I don't know if I know what direction to go in, but it just kind of helps me follow the trail.
And one of the first things you sent me was a picture of a teenage girl with like feathered hair.
Mm-hmm.
And that's pretty accurate, wouldn't you say, Michelle?
Yes, she definitely had the 80s feather going on.
Yeah. And you sent me a couple pictures, and it was interesting because I sent you some pictures, and the picture that you sent me of Kerry actually didn't look exactly like I had seen her, but then you just sent me a picture a couple days ago that looked almost identical to the original picture that I saw of her. And I was like, okay, that's what I was seeing, was that picture that you just sent me.
And then one of the first things you said, because I don't know that. You might know because Michelle, I start texting. I'll text you and ask you questions. But what you do is you'll send me a list of all the things that you got.
Yes.
And then I'll write back and say, yes, that makes sense. No, that really doesn't make sense. But one of the first things you said was you were getting an L name. Is there an L name? Like Linda, Lindy, Laura, Lucy?
Well, yeah, her nickname was Lulu. Her middle name was Louise. And her nickname was Lulu. And everyone called her Lulu. And there was even back then a cartoon with a little Lulu doll. And so that was her name, Lulu.
And then you asked me if she had a Raggedy Ann doll. And I have no idea. But then we asked you, Michelle.
Right. I don't remember a Raggedy Ann doll, but I clearly know there was a little Lulu doll. And it kind of looked like a big egg with legs.
So it was like a rag doll, not like a Raggedy Ann doll, but like a rag doll.
It was definitely a rag doll. And I remember when my mom went to see a psychic way back when, in 1980, she took the little Lulu doll.
She took the doll with her.
And it freaked the
medium
or psychic out so badly, she asked her to go put it in the car. So it's interesting how that Christy is now getting us,
the doll
about this doll.
And then the other thing was, you got a small white dog, which I couldn't answer either. Michelle could answer.
And I kept seeing the dog. Every time I tuned into her, I saw the dog every single time. It was like 5 times in a row. And I kept bugging Kathy, and she said, okay, I'll ask.
Yes. We had a small white dog named Muffin. She was a little toy poodle. And we had a black toy poodle also, who was the mother of Muffin and Gidget. And those were our dogs when she went missing. And Muffin actually got hit by a car not long after she died.
Oh, that's interesting. After she disappeared.
Oh, really? You didn't tell me that.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, I remember that she did, and it wasn't long after we lived there.
Oh, that's so weird. So, like,
that is interesting.
It's kind of interesting that you were getting a dog all the time with her, and the dog died right after she did.
Yeah. And Kathy even asked me, do you think the dog's associated with Kerry, or maybe with the person that took her, or the person that she was with? And I said, I couldn't get a feel for that, but the fact that the dog kept showing up with her made me think that she was attached to the dog, or the dog was attached to her, but somehow that they were together in that respect.
That's really crazy.
Yeah, that is interesting, actually.
One of the bigger things I found really interesting was you had kept talking about eucalyptus trees, that you saw rows of eucalyptus trees. And it didn't mean anything, and I always just like kind of leave it whatever you say and wait for later. And when we went on the walk with Investigator Bob, the walk that Kerry took that day to the ice cream parlor and back with the boys is on a eucalyptus lined street.
Yes.
And it's not very common. Like that whole street is literally rows upon just a huge row of eucalyptus
That was
trees.
really clear. I mean, that was one of the very strongest things that came through in the beginning was
and there's no
the
way
trees.
that I didn't know that.
Yeah.
And you didn't remember that until you went back. Did you even think about it when you were there?
No, I remembered the trees because I always thought it was creepy because I had to walk down that street by myself.
Well, and
from
they
school.
shade the whole street.
And so on one side, it was a dirt trail, kind of like a horse trail. Maybe it was a horse trail.
It was a horse trail, I
It was a
think.
horse trail.
Yeah.
And it was, your view was completely covered. So from the street.
No one could even see you.
According to Bob Tapp, the investigator, when I went on the walk with him as well, they told me that the boys said they dropped her off on that side of the street, which would have been the same side as the trees, but they claim she was dropped off across the street. So she wouldn't have been walking down where the trees were. She would have been on the other side where Hughes was. So that part was also very confusing to me.
The other thing that you texted me about several times was tennis shoes, white sneakers, white tennis shoes. And at the time, I just kind of put it in the back of my head because I didn't know anything. And then later, I found out, A, she was wearing white sneakers. 2, the sneakers were significant enough that the boys said that she told them she was going to go home and clean her white tennis shoes. And your mom said she did that all the time, that was a thing.
Yeah, it was weird. She did. I guess everybody had Vans back then, and she always had white Vans, and she was obsessed with
keeping
them white. So
and that's so weird.
Yeah, that's
interesting. You brought it up. I want to say you brought it up 3 or 4 times.
Yeah,
either
I did.
Tennis shoes or white sneakers.
And I think that when I get information, it's something that I don't know that it's necessarily important to solving the case per se, but it's something that is important to the person, the person on the other side, or that was important to them around the time that they died. In this case, I just think that was something that maybe it factored into her decision about how she ended up on the side of the road walking home that day. I don't know, but it kind of like the dog, it kept coming back.
Yeah, it was a significant thing in the case. The other thing is that you got stop sign near a corner or just a stop sign. And when you and I walked it, it's not a stop sign, it's a street light.
It's a light.
But then Bob told us that it was originally a stop sign where the boys dropped her off. Is that right?
Correct. There was no light there back then. In fact, when Bob first told me about the street name, I couldn't even picture it in my head. I had no memory of this street even existing. And then when I walked it, I said, oh yes, this was here. It just wasn't a light at all.
And then the other things you got, that she was a slim build and she was really petite, right?
Very.
Looks her age or younger by like 2020 standards. Did she look young?
I thought so. I did see one comment on Facebook one time that said, this girl looks like a 30-year-old woman. And I went, huh?
What?
I just thought that was bizarre.
She looks like a little girl, like in all the pictures I've seen.
She definitely did. I mean, I guess it was with that flowered Hawaiian shirt
the
on.
Hawaiian shirt?
I think because it's just so, that's just not what people look like these days.
Right.
You know, I just think it just looked odd to this person. But to say 30 years old, I thought that was way off base.
Really
she
off.
was really small and tiny and childlike.
And that may be why she came across to me as seeming younger than her. She just looked younger. Her personality didn't seem younger, but she just looked younger.
She did have a figure,
she did,
like a nice booty, and she definitely, I guess she didn't look like a little girl if you were looking at maturity wise,
development wise.
She had a good figure. Like you would notice it.
The things that we can't confirm were things that you got in regards to what happened to her, that the guy was familiar to her. Dark hair, mustache hair, is not short, longish 70s style. He was awkward. You got that she was a dancer and that she liked roller skating. Skipping or moving her feet, and you said that you guys used to roller skate. But that's so typical of the 80s. I mean, everybody kind of
roller skated all the time. My mom roller skated. We roller skated around the neighborhoods. We went to roller rinks. That's just what you did at that time.
You asked if she was a softball player.
Yeah, I saw her with the bat.
My dad coached us. And we have several pictures of us playing softball.
One of the things you got was drama. Can you tell us about it? That was why you moved, was drama with other girls.
Right. She, from what I remember, during her freshman year of high school at Cerritos High School, she just was not doing well there. Cerritos at the time was diverse in that...
she's one of the only white girls that...
I would say maybe 50-50. But when she went to high school, she did have some problems with girls, being jealous. And she was getting into fights. And she wasn't fighting. They were just being really mean to her. And she used to wear a lot of jewelry and necklaces. Back then, everybody had a charm necklace with these little charms on them. And I remember one time a girl ripped it off her neck. And
that was the whole reason why you moved from Cerritos to Fullerton.
My parents were like, okay, we need to get out of this neighborhood. And Fullerton at the time was up and coming. Our house was brand new. The neighborhood was brand new. And of course, we had an old neighbor named Danny who moved to Fullerton. And Sunny Hills was this new area of Fullerton. And Sunny Hills High School was a good high school. And they looked and found a brand new house. And we moved.
Now, another thing you had told us when Christy, when you met with Michelle before, that you felt that Kerry was hiding something, like she was telling you a secret, and you said that you thought it might be pot.
Yeah, it was like she was trying to tell me it's a small secret and I can't tell anybody. And I thought maybe she was smoking pot, which in 1980 for a 15-year-old girl, I'm in that generation too. That would have been something that we would have wanted to hide from our parents. I don't know if that was it or not, but there was something, it was like in her 15-year-old mind, she didn't want me to know or didn't want me to tell other people. It was something she was keeping a secret.
You had also said that you felt that maybe Kerry had actually gotten in the car with someone that she knew, that she may have gone willingly with someone.
Yeah, that was kind of the impression. I got that impression initially, and then when we did the walkthrough with the detective, I got the feeling that she may have recognized the car or the person and then immediately realized that she had made a mistake somehow quickly. But I don't know if it was somebody that maybe she didn't know and she felt comfortable with, but there was an initial sense of either I know this person or I'm comfortable with this person. And then it kind of changed real quickly. Okay, this is not a good thing that is happening here.
Right.
So
you said that you kept hearing her say, I made a mistake. I made a mistake.
Right. And I don't know if that was her reaction in real time when she was in the car with the person right away, or if that was kind of retrospectively, looking back on it, remembering what happened. When I did that, it was a mistake. But
right. She was so close to home. I think it'd be weird for her to
choose to go with someone,
jump in the car to be driven home because it was just way too close. But it was a different time back then, and people got in cars with people. And
it could have even been someone that she was familiar enough with, even one of the construction workers in your neighborhood, recognized her and she recognized him just from being in and out. Or, hey, you helped me find my dog the other day. Right. Can you help me again? You know what I mean? It could have not even been someone she knew. It could have been just a familiarity.
Someone she recognized.
Yeah, oh yeah, I'll help you. Or, hey, do you know where the gas station is or something? You know what I mean?
We'd only been there 2 weeks. And I did actually start thinking about the neighbors. And we had only been there 2 weeks, so we didn't really know anyone in my neighborhood. And I was thinking about that. I'm like, what if it was a neighbor? I mean, who knows?
Or it could have been something happened to your little sister. I mean, they've said that before where an abductor says, something happened to your little sister, your mom wants me to take you to the hospital.
Right.
Do you know what I mean? Where it could, where a child, a girl who's 15, I feel like now we tell our kids constantly, you have a password or a code word, or don't ever get in a stranger's car, or I don't care if the next door neighbor tells you to go with them, don't go with them. I don't feel like that was a big thing in the 80s. I don't think we told our kids that or drummed it into their heads like we do now.
I don't think we did, because even at Halloween time and stuff, we were
running around
till 10 o'clock at night without supervision. And in hindsight, it was a terrible idea considering with the amount of research that I've done. There were so many murders in
abductions.
The 80s and abductions, and it's insane.
Right.
But nobody knew because we didn't have any kind of social media. So,
Chrissy, you had said when you were listening to the episode that with Michelle, this was before or after you met Michelle?
After I met Michelle.
So you were listening to episode 2 with Michelle, and you said that you had an emotional reaction to it. What was that?
I did. I was in the car and I was listening to it, and I'm not really a crier, but about 20 minutes into the episode, I lost it. I got very emotional, very upset, and I kind of checked in with myself and said, okay, what's going on? Because this isn't me. This isn't mine. And I realized when I kind of stepped back a little bit, I think it was Kerry coming through, and it was like she was saying they remembered me. They remembered me. And it was a really emotional moment for her and kind of a healing moment for her as well, because I think for people on the other side, it's kind of like they forget things, or I don't really know. And I haven't had a super close connection with Kerry, but it really felt like she heard for the first time in a different way that you guys were paying attention and listening. And I realize you've been doing that all along, ever since the day she was gone, but it was a different level for her, and it really hit her in a different way. And I felt her emotion and her feelings.
Well, it kind of makes me feel bad that she could know that we weren't really thinking and talking about it, because it's true. It took me forever to deal with it.
You had felt that Kerry wanted Michelle to release her guilt, and then that just created more guilt for you.
It did.
Yeah, and there's no reason to feel guilty, because grief is a very subjective thing. Everybody handles it differently, and everybody handles traumatic events differently. And it's not, it's your journey, it's your mom's journey, and it's Kerry's journey. And all of you are in a different place on it right now. And your mom, we talked about your mom as well, and how it's affecting your mom. And Kerry doesn't want you guys to have guilt or hurt or carry over the pain. And she's on her own journey too. She's got to process what happened to her. And that's separate from what's happening with you guys. Mm-hmm. Because she went through a really traumatic event as well. So I just think it was kind of...
But hearing that is actually a positive thing, because I think it makes me want to keep going. Because sometimes I just think, why am I doing this? There's nothing. There's literally nothing. And I know I was talking to my brother, and he's like, short of someone confessing, going to go on forever as
it just depends.
Unsolved case.
It depends. I'm curious about that too, because clearly her mom has, aside from Michelle did it in a different way. Michelle wasn't necessarily looking for answers to her sister, but she did it in the way that she was investigating and reading and immersing herself in every missing person's case. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, yeah. And then, but with Crystal was looking for Kerry, and especially during the time of her death, which would have been, again, like Kerry going through her own journey. That was a traumatic, she wasn't thinking about her mom. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. Like, is there just a point where all these things converge? Do you know what I mean? You even think that you blocked certain things out, right?
I do. I also feel like something has gone on in my mind. Even now, it's a little bit better now, but I can't even keep myself in the train of thought. It just escapes me.
Because it's painful. Like,
I'm sure, yeah. And I never got any kind of therapy or anything for it. One of my daughters now is a therapist, and she loves to therapize me. So, and talk about my trauma and all of that, and just never was dealt with. And but yeah, I had a really hard time just dealing with it, not dealing with it, even thinking about it. It
was easier to think about another missing person's case than it was to think about your own sisters. Mm-hmm. I just wonder if, like, for Kerry right now, how you're saying that when you were listening to the podcast and it was her sister talking, that there's just like kind of a convergence of energy. Do you know what I mean?
There was at that point, yes.
Because like I'm researching it, Bob's investigating it. Michelle is being forced to think about it. Her mom is having to answer questions. You're trying to reach out to her. Like all these things, like there's been articles written about her.
Right.
They've always been investigating her. You know what I mean?
This is the most action this has ever had. So like, I'm glad she's feeling that.
Yeah, like it's a convergence. Do you know what I mean? Because like I'm even talking to Keith Sharon, who I hope to have on the show, but we just haven't been able to connect yet. He, like, it feels like, does that happen? I guess that's my question.
It could. And it goes
the
back
convergence
to
of all of this energy all at one time.
It could. And I think the energy is starting to connect and I mean, there's some momentum gathering, I think, and maybe that's the best word for it. And I hope that Kerry will help us and continue to help us and point us and you know, I think if we all listen to, you know, I mean, there's facts and there's investigations and there's, you know, things that need to happen in terms of confirming and validating facts. But I also think that we all need to listen to our gut and our intuition and follow that too, because I think we are getting connections and hearing things and feeling things and pulling all that together. And I think it is impacting what's happening to Kerry too. And
you had a specific message for Michelle from Kerry.
Yeah, it's not your fault. And she was really clear about that. It's not your fault. She was very emphatic. It's not your fault. And we talked about that when we met the first time, and I didn't know what that meant. And you explained it to me. And, you know, I just want to reiterate that for you because I think that that's probably been hovering over you for most of your life. And people make choices and horrible things happen to people, and you didn't have any control over what happened. So
and you were a little kid.
Your fault. Yeah.
Your guilt for not saying don't go that day that's not the guilt that your sister wants you to carry.
I wish I could go back and say don't go. Throw a fit.
Would that have changed anything?
Probably not.
And you know that. You actually know that.
Or maybe I should have gone and gotten her. I don't know.
You were how old? You were 12.
12.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And she was headstrong. she was cheeky and headstrong. You know, she would have just said, "Nope, sorry, bye." Probably. So.
And you're for her mom, you feel like the guilt has physically affected her.
Yeah, I think that the guilt has impacted her physically, and it's just taken a toll on her, and I think it's affecting her health. And it's affecting her heart. And, you know, when you talk about a broken heart, it affects people emotionally and it affects people physically too. And I think, you know, if I could pass any message on to your mom, it would be to forgive yourself, for her to forgive herself. She didn't do anything wrong either. She did everything she could. And on some level she knows that, but I think she still has that question mark in her mind. What else could I have done? Could I have done differently?
Right. Now it's hindsight. You know, once we realized what investigation was done, or lack thereof in this case, she didn't know that. You know, she
assumed that they were investigating that whole entire time.
She did,
and that still may not have changed anything.
Right.
I mean, there may just not be any information out there, even if the investigation had been handled differently, or if they'd handled it like they would handle it today, it still might have ended the same way with nothing. I mean, we don't know, and I think that's.
Well, I just think
something we have to, you know.
If it was handled differently from the very beginning, the very day,
there would have
segue into this.
100% would have been another.
There might have been a different outcome, because I don't know how anyone could objectively think or create a theory that this girl ran away based on the evidence we actually did have. And
not only that, her mom too. Now go over that. What, other than the fact that she had money on her dresser.
Let's go over it. Okay. We were home that day, and she knew a boy from our old neighborhood, Danny, and told me she was going up to the ice cream store to meet him, and she would be back. And she had her suitcase packed to go to the mountains with her friend. And she had money on the counter for the same reason. And she told the boys who reported to the police that she was going home to wash her shoes. So if you take all of that together, how could you possibly create a theory that this girl ran away?
Right.
I don't care if you went and asked someone their opinion. Hey, is this the kind of girl that might run away? Well, she had never run away before.
Isn't it a possibility with every 15-year-old? Do you know what I'm saying?
Sure. And I think that's kind of how the question was asked. I mean,
or responded to. Like, they were like, well, any 15-year-old girl might run away. Like, that's a stupid question. Did she run away? No.
No.
Do you know
she
what I'm
had
saying?
never run away before. I have no memory of ever having any problems. I don't even remember her being upset with moving. I had recently heard that she may have been upset with the move. And I even talked to our friends, Monique and Antonia, that were our neighbors, and we were best friends, and they don't have any recollection of that either.
Of her being sad about having to move.
This was a brand new, awesome house, and it wasn't that far from our old neighborhood, and I have zero memory of her being upset from the move, and I don't think my mom does either.
In starting schools, she wasn't an awkward little girl. She was a very pretty, outgoing little girl. So starting at a new school would have been exciting, not scary.
Right, and she didn't like the old school anyway.
Right.
She was getting her ass kicked.
Right.
So why would she want to stay there anyway?
Yeah.
You know? And she had friends from the old neighborhood and the new neighborhood.
So, like, you know, she had everything going for her. So there was just no reason why.
And what's interesting also is you had put up a piece of paper on, I don't know where you got it. It was in her handwriting, and it was a bunch of names.
It was your mom. It was
phone
from your
numbers.
mom.
Oh, that was from my mom.
Yeah.
Well, what was interesting on that piece of paper, there was Danny's name, there
Michael.
was Troy's name,
Michael.
and Michael. And I didn't even know Troy and Michael existed until Bob got involved in this case. But does that mean she had to have known them before that day if those phone numbers were on this piece of paper?
Yeah.
Because I thought that she met them that day. And
you
because they were
did?
Danny's friends. Yes. And it wasn't until I saw that piece of paper I went, wait a minute.
Yeah,
she
she
knows
clearly,
these guys.
yeah.
So she knew all of them.
Uh-huh.
I had no idea.
Oh, that's so crazy.
No idea. I didn't know them.
And have you tried to get the file from the Fullerton Police Department to determine what their thoughts were?
I called and I ordered it, and they said, okay, we'll call you when I have it, and I never heard back.
You know, I'm still trying to get a hold of that, right? Or at least ask them to go over.
If I could subpoena it. I mean, when in my cases that I do, I subpoena police reports all the time.
Well, it's information that you are completely entitled to as a family member.
Do you think they would have it even after 40 years?
It's 100%. I don't think they got rid of it. I really don't. I think that it would be weird for them to have purged it. So I think it wouldn't hurt. Yeah, it wouldn't hurt for you to try and get it again. And then, Christy, do you feel like you could maybe do a reading right now? Like, see if you can.
I can sure try.
Do you want to do that, Michelle? You okay with that?
Sure, yeah.
I can try. All right.
Because I'm telling you, I've had a lot of feelings lately.
Michelle is always suddenly having feelings. I was just texting me. I never occurred to me that you had not seen that picture. What had happened is I had emailed a picture to Michelle of Kerry that I found online, and that woke just a shit ton of emotions in you. And I didn't. When I sent it, I was just like, "Oh, she looks so pretty."
And I think because that's how I remember her, and that's exactly what she looked like. And that one picture that was always used in the
with the Hawaiian shirt in the paper.
That just really didn't capture her essence and really didn't look like her. I mean, obviously it was her, but the picture you sent me, it was like, okay, that's my sister.
And that's a picture that will be on our episode webpage this week. I'll use that.
That's how I remember her. And yeah, I was drinking wine, and so I was crying.
Which one did she remember?
The one I just sent you the other day.
Yeah, that's exactly how I saw her too. When I first tuned into her, she looked much more like that than she did in the picture with the Hawaiian shirt.
So was that a yearbook picture?
Yeah. It was from Cerritos High School.
So that had to have been, she only made it to 1 year.
That was 1 year before. That was exactly probably that photo. So it had to
have been 79 then, not 80.
That picture.
Yeah.
Would have been, 1979. It would have been most likely August of 1979. So.
That makes sense.
Yeah. It would have not been a full year. That picture was not a full year old. It was probably like 9 or 10 months old.
And I think then probably that Hawaiian.
That was probably 7th grade or something. That was definitely older.
I remember that picture prominently displayed in my house. So I always thought that was the last picture she had. It could have been. I don't know. The one you sent me looked like her. That made me remember her.
Clear,
yeah.
Are you getting anything?
Yeah. Did she know anybody who was in a band? A drummer? in a band?
I do not.
Okay.
recall.
I just saw, and I actually see her playing the drums, so I don't know what that means, and I don't know why I'm seeing her playing the drums, but that's what I see.
I don't know why I'm thinking that I should be remembering that.
Like
but
maybe someone had a drum set,
don't.
like a cousin or something.
It's really weird. I can't unequivocally say no. Like there's something there in my
Okay.
mind.
Well, you know what? I don't want to dwell on it. If it's supposed to come out, we'll figure it out.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing I see her doing is rocking a baby.
And that's the second time you've done that.
And I don't know if it's because she's around you with your babies, or if she's around the baby sister that we talked about. If she's around the baby sister that we talked about.
Did we talk about that in another episode, that your parents adopted a baby girl after
yes,
a
it was
year after?
in December of 81. We did talk about that.
We did, because one of the things you brought up.
Yeah, I wrote down baby sister in my notes.
But
And
she came after
Carrie was gone.
dead, so...
But the fact that she's referencing baby sister means that she was...
She still could have been around to observe that. But I don't know if it meant that she was pregnant and she was rocking. And that was what the reference is. I don't know.
It certainly is possible. I know she was sexually active at that time.
I mean, she could have been pregnant. And that may be the small secret she was talking about. I don't know.
It could be.
I just see her doing that. And I don't know what that means.
It certainly is a possibility.
Yeah, it could be. That could be. And if that's the case, somebody may know that. One of her friends may know that, or the boy that she was involved with, or the man that she was involved with may know that.
Right.
So there's two people involved in that. So somebody else, at least one other person, is aware of it.
Right. And I know when I was listening to Bob's interview, he said that he had read in one of the reports that she had a boyfriend at the time, and that struck me really weird because I didn't have a recollection of her having a boyfriend. And I talked to my mom, and my mom didn't have a recollection. And I'm thinking, okay, we had been in Fullerton for 2 weeks. And there was no boy that I could recall her talking to other than Danny.
It's crazy.
Maybe there was a secret boyfriend, and maybe that was part of the secret too.
Maybe.
Or some, because if your parents weren't aware of it, I mean, and she was, it's hard to say how.
Mm-hmm.
What 15 years old for some girls is too young to have a boyfriend. For some girls, it's normal to have a boyfriend, and people don't object to it.
Back then.
It was normal.
I mean that came
that
through.
fact right there makes me want to get the police report even more because I want to know the name of this boyfriend.
Yeah,
because
and what they talked to him about, what his explanation was.
Right, I would reach right out to him and
have them
say,
And I see, it's weird. I see her right now putting her finger up to her mouth like, it's a secret again. So there's something around this that she doesn't want people to know, or at the time didn't want people to know. So I think, again, like anything else that I come up with, I'm just going to put it out there, and it may come back later. The drummer may come back later. It's hard to say. It's hard to validate things sometimes. So.
Are you getting anything else?
Not right now. So is there something else we can talk about? And I'll pipe in if I get something.
Oh, another name that you had brought up that I forgot about was Susie. Was there any Susie in your life?
Oh, and that came up a couple times.
Yeah.
Yeah, you asked me about that, and I don't have
Can't think of anything.
No.
And your mom just recently told me her best friends' names. Antonio.
Monique and Antonia.
Monique and Antonia.
And I still talk to them this day.
You do?
This day.
I called, but I want to talk to both of them.
They'll talk to you for sure.
I have left a message. I'm waiting to hear back. Oh, you asked if she stole perfume from the other...
Yeah, I got this weird thing, and it was really random. And when I get weird things like this, it means something, and I just haven't figured out what it means yet, and you weren't able to correlate it. It seemed like she stole your perfume or you stole her perfume. And
I probably stole her.
And it was just kind of a random thing.
She was 15.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is the part that might be a little hard to listen to. Are you okay with going into things that might be more graphic?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. One of the things that you had gotten was that she was rocking herself back and forth, that she wasn't able to speak, that there was blood bubbling up on her lip. What, do you get anything more about that?
It felt like there was trauma or injury to her throat or her mouth. I don't know if there was any kind of suffocation or strangulation that happened, but it was like it was hard for her to talk. It was hard for her to breathe. And it was very upsetting to her and traumatic to her. It's something that because of the way her remains were found, we really don't, only the person that did this to her knows what happened to her. It seems like it's hard for her to talk about it because I'm not getting clear information from her. I'm just getting little images of it. But the injury and the pain and the trauma that I got was all around her chest and her throat and her face.
Do you get that it happened quickly or that she was alive for a while? I mean, because it's not possible to get exact idea of time of death from what the remains that were found.
I think it's all relative. I think that she was, I just have to say, she suffered for a while, but I don't know what a while means.
It could be minutes, hours.
It could be minutes,
days.
Hours, or days. I don't think it was days, but or months that she was suffering. I mean, she may have been alive for a while, weeks, days, months. I don't know, but she wasn't suffering for a really long time. At least not. That's not what's coming through from her. It's just this sense of panic and discomfort and trauma and like horrified, like, oh my God, this is happening to me,
That she figured it out, that she was...
Yeah, she knew. And that's why I think when we did the walk with the detective and I got so upset, we got to a certain point and I was so upset because I think I was physically feeling what she was remembering and her reaction to that. This is where it all started, right here when I got in the car here.
That's where I made my mistake.
That was where I made the mistake, yeah. And that just really, it was kind of like this flood of memories for her.
Do you have any questions for her, Michelle?
So many.
I'm sorry. I know this is hard to hear.
Many.
I know this is difficult.
So this is all very intriguing to me because this is my first experience with the medium. Well, actually my second, but first experience. You're right. With regards to anything. And it's fascinating to me and I totally am a believer. But why can't you just ask her what happened to her so we can know?
Oh, if it was only so easy. People like our detective wouldn't have any work to do if that was the case. I think my take on it is because people who've been through a really traumatic event, and this is living people or people who've passed over, it's hard for them to remember.
And honestly, Michelle can attest to that.
Yeah, I mean, it's really difficult to remember. We block things out. It's almost like being psychotic. And I don't get the sense that she's stuck, like stuck and hasn't been able to cross over. But I think the memories are fuzzy for her because it's really hard for her to remember. She doesn't want to remember because it's painful. It's like anything else. I mean, we shy away from pain. Mm-hmm. We don't want to go towards pain. We want to go away from pain. Mm-hmm. And I think it's very traumatic and painful for her to remember. And the other thing is she may not know who it was. Mm-hmm. She may have recognized the person or felt comfortable, but she may not have known who it was.
Is there anyone that would make it easier for you? Like when you're asking me questions and I can say yes or no, like talking to Michelle, does it make the picture clearer for you? Like, I picture it like a television screen, like you're seeing a television screen in your head. Is that accurate?
The information comes to me in all different ways. Sometimes it's like a visual. Sometimes I see words. Sometimes I hear things. Sometimes I feel things. Sometimes I smell things.
Would certain people make that easier for you? Like, would some people make that like vision more vivid for you? Like how talking to Michelle or talking to her mom?
It can. I think it depends on the connection that the person on the other side has with the person I'm talking to.
So there are people that can make it easier for you.
Yeah, it's the energy, the love, the relationship.
I feel kind of stupid thinking that there was this investigation going on for 40 years when there wasn't. I guess I'm naive. I never really was into criminal law or anything like that in my practice other than misdemeanors.
So you just assumed it was like an ongoing...
Right, I did. And it just wasn't. And it pisses me off that my mom in the beginning, she would get messages from the police and say, oh, has your daughter come home? And just super insensitive and ridiculous. And like I said, we already went over the evidence. Yeah, there wasn't any evidence of foul play, but there was a lot of evidence that would lead anyone with a friggin' brain that she didn't run away.
Right.
They should have immediately started a criminal investigation.
Yeah, and they've changed those laws now. That doesn't happen anymore. There's Amber Alerts. There's any child abduction has to be investigated thoroughly from the minute it's reported. And did you know that one of the statistics is that it takes approximately 2 hours to get the information from a parent when a child goes missing? Because the parent is so, I guess, like panicked.
Distraught.
You're panicked and distraught. The police to get all the information they need takes 2 hours. And those are 2 hours that are ticking. It's a ticking time bomb whenever a child goes missing. Mm-hmm. And a lot of them are runaways. A lot of them are abductions by family members. But out of those cases, there's a certain percentage and an unacceptable percentage of kids that get kidnapped. And that's clearly what happened with Kerry. And Kerry's investigation went from runaway to missing to murder. And that's what we're talking about right now. And that's what the focus needs to be, is that Kerry was murdered. Someone took her life. And if anybody has information, knows anything, regardless of how teeny tiny it is, there's information that the police have been collecting over the years that anybody's teeny tiny bit of information might match something else and completely blow this case up, where it can be determined, it can be figured out. It's not just going to be a confession. It could be coming from a multitude of places, and we just don't know what that is yet.
People don't know what they know either.
They don't know what they know. They just know that they think that their information isn't relevant or important, and you just don't hesitate. Just call. Just email us, call Bob, say something.
And if you were one of the last people to see her, please continue to be helpful and don't be afraid to
repeat your story over and over again.
Repeat your story. If you don't have anything to hide and nobody is even suspecting you, why would you not try to help or to call me and talk to me? And
that really goes with any case, not just Kerry's case.
Right. I'm very easily accessible, and I just don't understand why some people involved in this won't talk. That's super bizarre to me, but I guess
it is
there's
what
a
it
reason.
Is. Well, and that's the thing. They know, just like when you're listening to the podcast, because I know you listen to every episode, you know the whole story.
I do.
So like it's repetitive to you and you can pinpoint little things. Do you know what I'm saying? Where I don't think people realize that even if they're telling their story for the 100th time or the 1,000th time, that there's a need for it. Do you know what I'm saying? Like with every missing person's case, I think that.
And I didn't know the whole story. I learned a lot about this story throughout the years.
It wasn't all available at all
I was
at the same
12,
time.
so nobody really included me in their
Right.
discussions about it. It wasn't until I got older and I got more curious, and I actually wrote an article about not necessarily her case, but when I was in law school, and it was published, and it was about older kids that go missing and how the investigation policies are completely different, and when does the red flag turn yellow type thing, and it goes deep into the history of kidnapping, and I learned a lot back then. But anyway, with respect to this case, it wasn't until I started getting more and more information by reading things and reports and such that I was very enlightened. And for instance, I had no idea there were 3 boys with her. I always thought there was just one.
Yeah.
And
you told me that. You told me that you just recently learned that. In the last year, like since the article came out by Keith Sharon in the Orange County Register.
That was just one, and I thought 3 boys and 1 girl, but apparently all their stories were consistent on what they did that day and where she was allegedly dropped off. So,
but that eats away at you. You want to talk to them yourself.
It does. I want to ask. And I also want to ask when they met her, because, like I said, their names appeared in her own handwriting on a piece of paper in her room.
So she knew them from before. So you want to know
where?
those things.
And I know Michael was from I think he went to Buena Park High School.
That's right. I found him in Buena Park High School.
Where the hell? Why was he in Fullerton?
Yeah. That's interesting.
Those are just little questions that I have.
Yeah.
And I'm not accusing anyone. I'm just want to know some answers.
How
did you know my sister? I don't think that's a really
scary
hard one
question.
to answer,
Yeah.
you know?
Well, and I think that a lot of people who don't, and I feel blessed that I've never had anyone go missing or anything even remotely close to it. And I don't think that the rest of the world, that the people that are blessed like I am, can even possibly understand your desire to just face someone, to understand someone. It's the same reason why people do victim impact statements. It's the same reason why people will go visit. If you go to the CDCR website, the Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation, there's actually a link to meet with someone who committed a crime against you. Because I think it's human nature to have a connection with a person that last was with your sister. Like, I don't think it's that unreasonable or that strange. I think I understand their viewpoint of not wanting to, because they didn't ask to be the last person to see your sister if they didn't commit a crime or anything. Do you know what I'm saying? They are not asking to be in that position. But I understand your position of feeling that's a rock unturned. That's a leaf that you didn't.
Another big fact that I didn't know was apparently Kerry told Danny when she got to the ice cream parlor that
someone was following
her.
And why was that not followed up on?
And that's a huge fact, and I never knew that. It's not in any of my writings that I've done.
So that's something that is something that still hasn't been discussed.
And if that's true, why wouldn't you take her home if some creep was following her?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
It just
there were
doesn't
kids too,
make
though.
any sense.
Yeah.
And if she really was dropped off where they said she dropped, or they dropped her off, it had to have happened in a split second. I mean,
it wasn't that far from your house.
It wasn't that far at all. You couldn't see my house, but we walked it in like 5 minutes.
Right.
So if someone was...
Was it someone who followed her there and was following her home and saw the boys take off?
Were they lying in wait, like waiting for her to be dropped off? I mean, that kind of takes the case into a different direction than some random guy driving up the street going, oh, look, there's a cute girl. I'm going to pull over and kidnap her and kill her. You know what I mean? That's just... And again, does that a huge fact for the police if Danny told the police that night?
Yeah, and did he tell the police that night?
With all those facts, why would you even think about a runaway theory?
Right.
Why? They didn't.
Right.
It wasn't serious. Come on.
Right.
It wasn't. They just didn't do anything.
Do you have anything to add?
Do you think that the creep that was following her was the abductor? Are you getting anything like that?
It could have been. I got a real clear image of a man in a car at that spot where she was. And he did come across as creepy, so your description is not that far off. But I gave a description of what he looked like, but I don't know the connection past that.
And Christy, you're going to continue to see what you get.
Absolutely.
For like ever.
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah.
Beyond
and as I get more validation, it helps. It just helps me confirm and kind of, like I said, it kind of opens the door. When something is correct, it's like, okay, we got that right. And then we kind of can maybe move up another level. And I also think it helps me connect with Kerry better too.
And if
that would be a question I would have for Danny is, okay, so what did she say about this creep that was following her? Was it somebody in a car?
Yeah.
Was it somebody on foot?
Did they have a conversation about it? Were they worried about her? Is that why they took her home? Like, or did they not think about it again? Or did you know what I mean? I'd be curious too.
That's a question I would love to have answered.
And if that ever
Who
gets
is this creep?
asked, let me know, because I even have an idea of what kind of a car it was. Mm-hmm. So, that would be interesting.
If her mom wants to speak to you, would you speak to her?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you have anything else for Christy?
I could be here for hours.
But you know that you can text her
Yeah.
anytime. We have a text thread going, so you can text her anytime. But there's nothing specific you have right now.
I just would be really interested in just continuing to receive your texts with any information that comes to you, because something's going to click, hopefully, someday. But I think maybe we should focus on this creep that was supposedly following her and get some information on that. What kind of creep? Yeah. Young creep? Old creep?
Creep in a
car? Walking, bike? That's something I'm going to go get the police report and I'll look it up. But.
Yeah. Well, I think you getting the police report too will help with your own finality of it too, is that you need to complete the circle for yourself. Mm-hmm. You need to have all the information that you need. But that's
a question that both Danny and Mike could answer.
Yeah.
For me.
One of them might be able to, yeah, if they choose to speak to you or speak to me. If you have any information regarding the disappearance and murder of Kerry Patterson, regardless of how small you think it is, please call Investigator Bob Taft at the Orange County Sheriff's Department at 714-647-7045. Or you can contact OC Crime Stoppers anonymously at 855-847-6227.